Drew, what's up, man?
What's up, bro?
You're tuning in from Miami, right?
Yeah, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, same thing.
Okay. What's the temperature like there right now?
Bro, I'm outside right now, short sleeves. It's about, I think we're like 79.
Damn.
Yeah, 39. But the wind is cool, it's breezy.
So do you still go in the ocean and go to the beach at this time of year?
I mean, I can. I go to the beach a lot. The ocean's kind of cold sometimes.
Yeah. Have you lived there your
Yeah.
whole life?
Yeah, I grew up here. And I didn't leave until I went into the military. I spent 5 years in the Marines, and then when I got out, I came right back. I've lived in different places all over the world, but I love this one the most.
Okay. So what prompted you to go to the military?
So when I was growing up, my dad. When I was growing up, my dad. Okay. Sorry about that. I was 14. Him and my mom split up, and I didn't really have any like male role models, like good male role models. And when I graduated high school, I wanted to test myself. So I said, you know what? If I could be successful in the most difficult branch of the military, then I could do anything in my life. So that's what led me to the Marines.
So what makes the Marines more difficult than the other branches?
Uh, our boot camp is the longest. The standards for Marines are just at the highest. Like from day one, when you're in the Marine Corps, they preach this like you're better than any other branch of service because we do more with less. We go through more pain. We go through more bullshit. We have the most shittiest equipment. Like we have that pride in being able to be more the less, and we're like the smallest branch of service too. So everything they just make everything harder, just in general.
Okay. So how long
Yeah,
were you in the Marines?
5 years.
5 years. Did
Yeah, I was in. Huh?
did you go overseas and go into combat and all that?
Yeah, I went to Iraq when I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah, 19-year-old.
So
Yo,
what does that do to a 19-year-old kid?
but like when you're 19, you're always doing stupid shit, and it's like now you have so much responsibility. To go into a war zone and have to know like when you can shoot, when you can't shoot. Like you're making decisions like that when you're not even old enough to drink.
Right.
So it's like you're trying to figure yourself out, but then like you have all this responsibility, and then you go there and uh it's how do I explain it? Like it's a mind fuck, and then with me in particular, like halfway through my deployment, I almost shot a little girl because I thought she was a suicide bomber, and well, I almost shot her mom because I thought she was a suicide bomber. And that really like kind of reconnected me with my humanity inside of a war zone. And it was like, what the hell am I doing here? And then like I really started to look at like try to find like the politics behind it, which there was really no reason for us to go to Iraq in the first place. So it was like it was hard for me the rest of my deployment to continue to do what I was doing. But I had to because it's not about you, it's about the Marine to the left and the right of you. So it's like, all right, do I want to come home? So you got to keep going.
So up until that point, before you almost shot this woman, you were like, "This is the right thing. I'm doing the right thing. Like I'm going hardcore. This is awesome." And then was it like after that you're like, "Holy shit! Like what am I doing?" Is that kind of how?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because they make it sound so cool, right? Like you get to boot camp and you get these uniforms and you're training to fight, and it's like uh a lot of like the movements, right? Marching movements, you'll say like kill, 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 and it sounds so cool at that time, right? But it's not cool.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was hyped up, you know, just ready to go. Like you train. It's like jujitsu, right? We both train jujitsu. It's like you train so much, and it's like you want to go compete, right? It's the same mentality where it's like you train so much, you actually want to go to war to see what it's all about. Like you want to do your job
Right.
until you do your job. And you're like, ooh, I don't know about this.
Right. So after that moment where you almost excuse me, after that moment where you almost shot this woman, like was it then a thing where you were trying to do everything you could to get out? Or how did you go about getting out of the military? How did you go through that second half of your term
Oh, so I was talking about the second half of deployment.
or deployment? Okay.
But yeah, because that happened like 3 months through, and then the last 3 months is where I was kind of like thinking about stuff. But um after I got back from Iraq, I was like, because this is 2006 yeah, 2006. So it was constantly like you were constantly getting deployed. So I what I did is Marines can do this thing where we go guard embassies. It's called MSG duty. So I signed up to go on MSG duty. I extended my contract for a year, and I spent my last 3 years in the Marine Corps guarding embassies, which is one of the funnest things I've ever done because I guarded an embassy in West Africa, and then I went to China, and then I went back to West Africa. But I traveled to Thailand, Albania, France. Where else did I go? I said Thailand. Like I traveled all over the place, and it was cool. I met a couple presidents. I met Jimmy Carter. I met Old Man Bush. I met Junior. Like I met a whole bunch of people, so it was pretty cool.
And I'm sure that was a little less or a little more chill than Iraq.
Oh yeah, way less.
So you're just
I was still
traveling.
overseas, but it was cool. I wasn't in like too many dangerous countries after that.
Okay. So then what did your life look like after you got out of the Marines or after you were guarding these embassies?
So on my last 6 months of when I was at the embassy duty, on my last 6 months, I started to like jujitsu. Right, I started watching UFCs, and I started to really like because before when I used to watch it, I hated like what are they doing on the ground? And then I heard Rampage Jackson in an interview, and he was like, BJ Penn is the greatest fighter of all time. So I'm like, who the hell is BJ Penn? And then I looked up BJ Penn, and then I seen like how he was the first American to win the black belt worlds in Brazil, then how he got his black belt in 3 years, something like that. So I really started to like just go down the YouTube rabbit hole and watch all the old prides, like as much jujitsu footage as that was on YouTube at the time. And as soon as I got out, I started training jujitsu like a madman. And then I was competing, was in good shape. I had bought a house, and I was I was good for a while, but then I got into a relationship, and I tore my ACL like a year and a half into the relationship, or 2 years. 2 years into the relationship, I'm a blue belt at the time. I tear my ACL, and I got super depressed. Like I didn't want to do anything. I was super depressed because I couldn't train anymore. And then that's when I started to have like nightmares, like about war and shit. And it happened like, this is now 2012, and I'm still thinking about the war in '06. Like I didn't understand that. And I was super depressed. I was drinking with the medication, and she broke up with me, so that added another layer to it. It's like heartbreak now, and I went through that for 2.5, 3 years.
So you were just in a state of depression, nightmares, just in a really dark place for 2 to 3 years, and you were on antidepressants, right?
No, so I went to the VA because there was a point where I was like, my mom and my brother were like, "Yo, you need to get help," and I was like, "All right, fuck it." So I went to the VA and the Veterans Hospital, and I said, I was telling them what was up, and they're like, "Okay." So they gave me like medication for sleeping, medication. There was like a whole bunch of them, but one of them in particular was an antidepressant. And when I read the warning where it said like suicidal ideation could be a possible side effect, that's when I'm like, something's not right here, you know. And then I looked at the veteran suicide rate, and it was 22 a day at that time. So I'm like, I need to learn how to fix myself in order to inspire others to do the same. So during that process, that's like when I really started to delve into spirituality. And because I grew up Christian, and I always had questions. Like, one of the questions that I kept asking, like anybody who was trying to teach us stuff, I'm like, all right, if God don't like gay people, why did he make gay people? Like that, like, this is me at like 14, like, and I had so many questions like that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I would always, like, nobody would ever be able to explain to me fully like what it was about. So I always kind of like had that rebellion against Christianity. Especially now when I learned like what Christians did to my ancestors, is like, yeah, you know, I'd rather not. So when I started to learn about, like, you know, spirituality and like Hinduism and Buddhism, like, I really started to like those. So I started to like meditate, and I started to get into psychedelics, which led me to trip to Peru to go meet Mother Ayahuasca.
Okay. So you were in a really dark place for 2 to 3 years, and then you found spirituality, and then you found psychedelics, which then led you to take a trip to Peru.
Yes.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
talk about that trip? What did that look like, and what did that do to you?
And so I so I had just recently graduated, and I had recently graduated. Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yeah. So I don't. Okay. I graduated college. I graduated with my degree in social work because I wanted to become a therapist. And I was doing my master's, and the first night of my master's, one of my friends, she was sitting in front of me, and like I whispered to her, I'm like, listen, this is gonna be the last time you see me in this class. And she's like, what? You're so weird. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Peru. So I call up my cousin who was a pilot, and I'm like, hey, how much to get me on a flight to Peru? And he's like, oh, you just have to pay the taxes, like 188 bucks. I'm like, all right. So I bought the ticket, and then I bought a 3-day ayahuasca retreat, and then I had an Airbnb for 30 days. So I was going to Peru just to do my retreat, then have 30 days to do whatever. I didn't have any plan. I just was out. So I get to Peru, and I didn't even realize that I didn't have somewhere to stay the first night, because the second day I was supposed to be there is when the retreat started. So I get to Peru, and I'm like, shit, where am I going to stay for the first night? So I went on couchsurfing.com. No, it was an app called Couchsurfing. And I Couchsurfing, are you familiar with Couchsurfing?
I mean, I've heard of like people in LA doing it.
Yeah, so it basically, it's like Airbnb, but like for free.
Okay.
But you know, you go, you request to stay at somebody's house, and you go and you request to stay at somebody's house, and then they'll they'll they they'll approve it, and then they'll write you a review. Right. So I I hit up this guy, his name was Fion. He's this dude from Iceland. And we had like the craziest conversation. It was like very like witty and sarcastic or whatever, but like we were cool. Like, so he accepted it. And then when I got there, I found out that he made a lot of money in his 20s. So now in his 30s, what he used to do is he used to go rent out houses and just uh invite, like, and then he'll host couch surfers. Right. So that's what he did. And he was like this Terrence McKenna kind of dude, where like he was like into every psychedelic and wanted to mix and match and do all this other stuff. So when I met him, it was like perfect. It was like, okay, cool. So when I got to the house where he was at, there was like his girlfriend that was from Jamaica. There was a girl from Brazil, a girl from Ireland, and a couple from Spain. So it was like all of these people that just like congregated to this one house. And it was like we all didn't have a plan. Right. It was like, we're just gonna be in this for 30 days. And it was cool because it was like in the sacred valley of Cusco in Peru, and it was beautiful, and the house was beautiful. It was like so peaceful. There was like a river coming off of the mountain, which sounded like it just sounded like it was raining all the time. So it was like so peaceful.
Wow.
And so I meet them. I told them I was gonna stay one night, and they were like, "Hey, if you want, you could just stay your whole trip here." So I had an Airbnb in the city, but I just stayed in the Sacred Valley for 30 days. So boom. So I spent the night there that night, and then I go to my ayahuasca retreat the next day. So you go there, and in Cusco, it's cool because you have the mountain shamans and you have the shaman from the jungle. So you meet the mountain shamans, and like they start giving you like essential oil, like they start splashing you with that, and like they basically cleanse your energy to get you ready for like the journey, right? And then there's like, you know, you do prayers and all kinds of stuff, little rituals, and then at night you meet the shaman from the jungle, and he has the ayahuasca. So you meditate for 30 minutes, and then he gives you the ayahuasca, and then you meditate on it for 30 more minutes. So I remember meditated on it for that last 30 minutes, and then he started singing Icaros. You know, and Icaros, they're beautiful songs that these shamans sing that kind of guide you through your journey. So I was like, I just remember I opened my eyes, and he goes like this, like he tells me like to lay down. And then like my spirit went like this, bang, right? Now I'm in like, I'm in ancient Egypt, and there's like streets of gold, and I'm looking at Anubis and all like the Egyptian gods. And the feeling of this place, like it was like one of the greatest feelings. It's like kind of like an orgasm that just lasted for as long as I was there. Like it was like the vibration of that place was insane. And I was like, damn, like this place feels really good. And I was like, Mother Ayahuasca, what is supposed to be my next step in life? So then this little old lady pops up, and she looks back at me, and she's like, this is your universe, create it. And she disappears. So now I start making all these like sacred geometrical structures, building my own pyramids. And then for whatever reason, I just started asking her for stuff. So I was like, you know, I want divine creativity, right? So then these little fairies come, and they open up my hand, and they put stuff in there, and they bounce. And I'm like, ooh, intelligence. Some little fairies pop back up, and they open up my head, and they put stuff in there, and they bounce. Then when I asked for strength, I started to grow really big into like a giant. And I realized that that was just like my ego inflating. So I was like, ugh, I was like, Mother Ayahuasca, this is not why I came here. Like, I'm sorry, like what I came here for is enlightenment. So then she pops back up, and she's like, if you wish for me to open your third eye, you have to give me your right eye. She bounces. Just, and I'm like, what? So now I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, like, can I put on a patch? Like, yeah, I start thinking like all this craziness. So now I'm in like, I'm in a space now where, you know, when you're meditating, your thoughts, like you'll be still for a little while, but then your thoughts start like going,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to like bring it back to center.
Mm-hmm.
This was happening to me in real life. So I was not real life, but like in the vision, I started creating stuff again, but then I would stop. And then I'd start like going and creating more stuff, and then I'd stop. And then finally, like I just like sat down like in defiance. I was like, this is not why I'm here. And Mother Ayahuasca pops back up, and she's like, like, how are we supposed to teach you anything when you're trying to control everything? Either master meditation or give me your right eye. She's like, those are your two choices. And she disappears. So after like as the journey starts to go to completion, there was one thing that really stuck out in particular. There was like one more vision. And it was, I was like in space, and there were TVs in front of me for as long as I could look up, down, left, right. There's like TVs everywhere. And it was the ex-girlfriend, the one that I got my heart broken with. It was her life. and the center TV was me and her, and then if you look left and right, it was like all of our relationship. But then you look up, she's getting older. You look down, she's getting younger. So it was just all I took from that. I don't really know why it was her at the time, but what I took from it is like the whole thing where it's like time isn't linear. You know, that's what I got from that. So boom. So the very next day, I go back to the house where all my new friends were, and the girl from Brazil and the girl from Ireland, they were like, hey, you want to go with us? It's 2 hours away by bus, but it's like what would be like the equivalent of a Peruvian barbecue, right? And it's like 2 hours away. I was like, all right, I'll go. Fuck it. You know, I'm high. Like I'm still like, you know,
Still got
still, huh?
you still got that ayahuasca glow.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect. Still got the ayahuasca glow. I'm thinking about the journey. I'm like, damn, that was so too cool. But I'm also like naturally a skeptic, you know. So I'm like, all right, was that just the quote unquote drug, or was it like real? Right. This is what I got thinking in my head. So we go 2 hours by bus and we finally make it to this place. So then I go there and it's you know, people are like they're eating and they're dancing and it's just a cool vibe. And I see an ayahuasquero now. Ayahuasquero isn't really a shaman, right? Because shaman is like, if I'm a shaman and you're my kid, now when as you're growing up, you're gonna get your first ayahuasca journey at 14, and then you're gonna be a shaman too, right? That's how it works. So ayahuasquero is kind of like, I know how to take you through the journey, but just I'm not a shaman. So I see him and he had this thing on his shirt. I don't know if you'd be able to see it, but probably not.
Okay.
Right. But what it is, it's a jaguar
Oh,
with
see the eye,
his
yeah.
his third eye open and his right eye closed. So I saw it and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, Mother Ayahuasca told me last night that she wanted to take my right eye, and you know, I started like to freak out. And he laughed at me. He's like, yo, he's like, you take everything too literal. He's like, every religious text will tell you in one way or another that this world is an illusion. So he's like, see everything right with your left eye. But he's like, you know, don't take everything so literal. He's like, you gotta feel shit. He's like, look at it with your third eye. And I was like, oh, right. So it's kind of like be in the world, but not of the world kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So then the rest of my Peru trip, I didn't eat meat. I didn't watch TV. Wasn't on my phone. I would spend a lot of time in nature doing hikes and stuff. And that was a nice reset to come back to me, because one of my mentors told me, he's like, you know, the opposite of depression is expression. And with the help of the plant medicines and just being in Peru and just like not being so overcome by like the noise, uh, that's what kind of helped me elevate over that depression.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Damn. So you were there for a month.
yeah,
How many
one
times
of the best months of my life.
how many times did you do ayahuasca?
I did ayahuasca twice. Um, I did DMT once. No, I did DMT twice, and I did San Pedro once.
Okay. What was San
Yeah,
Pedro like?
bro, 18 hours of feeling everything is the best way, because ayahuasca is like a mind opener, and like San Pedro is like a heart opener,
Mm.
and it gets you like really grounded. So I took it like at 7 a.m. and I was rolling around in a field of grass crying for like 3 hours. Yeah. And the girl from Brazil, like she comes outside, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm crying and crying. But that was that was cool, because it's kind of like trauma. Trauma gets stored in the nonverbal parts of your brain. right? So talk therapy is cool, but it's more like a band-aid.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it comes to trauma, like you have to do something to get it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it just seems like all the trauma that I've been carrying around my entire life got expressed, like got expelled during that 3 hours of crime.
So was it like you were re-experiencing the trauma, or were you just coming to terms with it? Were you like having visions of it, or how did that trauma release out of you?
So from my understanding, based on like, books I've read and like, things I've studied, it's like trauma is like an energetic hold, right? Something happens. Like, are you familiar with the book Waking the Tiger?
Mm-mm.
So Waking the Tiger, I forgot the dude's name that wrote it, but Waking the Tiger, one of the concepts that he expresses is like why animals don't get PTSD. And he's talking about a gazelle and how if a leopard comes and like snatches that gazelle by the neck, and the gazelle has three things they could do, like we all do. It's fight, flight, or freeze. So usually the gazelle is gonna freeze, and sometimes the leopard doesn't want to eat that thing that's just dead, so it'll just leave it. So what happens is the gazelle, after a certain amount of time, will just get up and then start convulsing violently, and then shake out all of that trauma, and then just goes about its day,
Mm-hmm.
right? But human beings, we don't allow ourselves to do that, because if somebody starts convulsing, you automatically give them medicine to make it stop, right? So, um, in terms of me being in that field, that was like me just allowing that energy just to finally get released.
Mm-hmm.
In that book, he says it's kind of like what we do to ourselves, kind of like get ourselves to the point where we're gonna orgasm, but don't do anything with it. So it's like you get yourself there and then you just stop, and then that energy just stays there, and it's just like wants to be released, but you don't.
It can sit
That's what,
for years, from my understanding.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just charged up, and like then it'll like come out like an angry outbursts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it'll just pop, like it just so that so yeah, those 3 hours I just kind of like, it wasn't like, oh well, this is trauma from XYZ, right? And this is being released. It's like, no, my body just was holding on to this energy and I just cried it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because I haven't actually heard of that book, but I heard of that. Someone described that same concept to me with the gazelle. And even
Yeah.
if you like see a dog after a dog thinks it's going to run, but then there's like a glass screen and they don't see it and they run into the screen. After it, they'll shake it out because they don't want that stuck in their fascia. And we as humans, we don't carry out that mechanism. So we just hold on to all this trauma in our fascia that can just weigh us down. And people who go through plant medicine experiences a lot of the time complete that mechanism of your body shaking out the trauma of you. And then after you feel light, you feel happy, you feel relieved. I've never done ayahuasca or San Pedro, but I've had very similar experiences on mushrooms or even 5-MeO DMT. And so, yeah, I think that's what part of what makes these so powerful is, as opposed to Western medicine that just try to suppress the symptom and not actually go to the root. These plant medicines go to the root and allow you to really release everything that you're holding on to.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because like our bodies, like DMT, for example, is like our bodies naturally produce it.
Mm-hmm.
So in getting that, like our body knows what to do with it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the synthetic drugs that they use. It's like it doesn't work.
And,
Or it numbs the symptoms, but it doesn't attack the root, like you said.
and it's not healthy for you either.
No,
And what's interesting about all these synthetics is, have you read the book The Cosmic Serpent?
no. Oh, nah, I've heard of it though.
So basically all these pharmaceutical companies, I don't remember what the time frame was, but they went down to the Amazon jungle and met with all these medicine people, and they would tell them like, this is a plant to heal this, this is a plant to heal this, this is a plant to heal this. So then what the pharmaceutical company did is they isolated that plant and extracted one chemical from it and put it in a pill, and thought that that would be, because then they wanted to commercialize it and like be able to mass produce it in pills, and they thought, oh, since we extracted this chemical from this plant, it's going to do the same thing. But what they don't
Yeah.
realize is the plant, the whole structure of the plant is what makes it a medicine in its natural form. So now
Mhm.
we have all these pharmaceutical pills that are actually come from the jungle. Like the Amazon jungle is like the heart of this earth. It's like the most diverse ecosystem. That's where all of our Western medicine comes from. The problem is that it's not the complete plant.
Yeah.
So I want to go into like your life after you got back from Peru. Like then what happened?
Mhm. So it's interesting because I thought that that cloud that I was on after I did it, because remember I spent 30 days in Peru after, so 30 days after the ayahuasca retreat. So it's like everything is just bliss, and like, oh, like I'm vibrating on a new level, and like this is great. I'm gonna take this back home and just continue that, upward spiral. And I got here and it was like culture shock. It's like I got irritable and pissed off at everything because I was so overwhelmed because I didn't realize just like how many advertisements are in your face. How much stress everybody is carrying. Because like in Peru, I wasn't around very many people, and the people that I was around, like we're having a blast, and so when I first got back, it was very like it was like eye opening. It was like a shock, like oh shit, like and it really opened my eyes to all of the noise that's going on here.
Mhm.
So that was one thing, but after that, I really started to take the advice of what Mother Ayahuasca told me, which was like to master meditation. So I would meditate on my own. Like I started getting into binaural beats. Um, I even did like a transcendental meditation course. Uh, that was all right. Um, but then I started to do active and dynamic meditations with Elliot Holst. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that's crazy. I actually used to watch a lot of Elliot Halston. Isn't, from my understanding, it's like a lot of like jumping and shaking and shouting and screaming. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
were you doing this with Elliot?
yeah,
That's cool. I
I've
didn't.
gone to. I think I've done it with. I think I've gone to 3 different grounding camps.
So
Is what it's called.
what does that dynamic meditation look like?
So all right. So in the morning, you have I forgot the names of it exactly, but in the morning you get your body really charged. So like you're breathing through your nose and you're like right? You do that for like 15 minutes. Right? You charge your body up. And then you start screaming and shouting, like you just catharsis, just get everything out. Right? Cry, laugh, do what you got to do. Like you just whatever comes up, let it out. And then you do this grounding exercise where you keep your hands in the air and you jump up, and as soon as your feet hit the ground, you go hoo. So you're like hoo 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 as a grounding, and then the last. So then after that, you stay still wherever you land. Like if your hands are still in the air, you just leave them there, and if they just start falling, just let them fall. So there's stillness, and then after that, you start dancing. You just do like just let it out. So it's like there's different stages. So that's like what you do first thing in the morning, and then you have other exercises. Like one of them in particular that I like is called like lion's breath, where you're sitting, you're with a partner, and you at first you're just kind of like looking at them. You're just like breathing, like you're looking into the eyes, and you're just like right. And then then you start like moving around, and then you start doing like this to each other, and then you start roaring at each other, and then you start like swiping and roaring, and then it gets like really like almost violent, but like you're not touching each other. And then after that, then you start playing. It's like we hug, and then like everybody's like running around the room like a bunch of like little like lion cubs or whatever. So it's a lot of exercises like that that make you confront somebody really aggressive, but then turn it around to like stillness and then dancing.
So what did that do for you? Like, how did you, when you walked away from that grounding camp, like, how did you feel as opposed to when you came in?
Yeah, like all my emotions are normal. I can express, and like as a man, right? We naturally we have a little bit more testosterone, so it makes us a little bit more aggressive, right? So it's like it made me feel comfortable, like being able to express that aggression, but also being able to like show love to another man. You know, because like my dad didn't tell me I love you when I grew up. You know, that I think he might have told me like twice in my whole life. You know, so sharing, like showing that type of love to other men, like it was cool. It's like we can be aggressive, we could fight, you know, but then we can also hug and we can also like show love. So it's like very balanced. So what I really got from it is like being able to accept all the different versions of myself, like fully,
Mhm.
you know, and express it without feeling judged.
That sounds so primal, but like how we're supposed to be. And I feel like we've gotten away from, like, especially men, well, and women, just all humans in general have gotten away from that primal nature of what our body naturally wants to do, how we naturally want to live. And so is that something, that dynamic meditation, is that something you still practice?
Yes, I need to turn it. What I would like to do though is like to make it like a daily practice, because when they, like me and Elliot are really cool. Like he's like my big brother. Like I've hung out with Elliot so many times. I've seen him around. Like I've been with him around his family, ate dinner with them. Um, so anytime that there's a grounding camp, I go to it, and I help him out. Like I help out. Like there's a crew that helps, and I'm part of that crew. So I do it when he has the events, but I need to do it more. Because when I was doing it daily, like I'd wake up and just like play a crazy song, and I wouldn't necessarily go through like the 15-minute, like the different stages, but just dancing to a song, but with no particular like with no particular steps. You just dance however your body feels. It helps you throughout your day, because basically you're telling your brain, like, I don't care what you think, I'm gonna do what I want. Right. And I'm not gonna subscribe to the patterns that my ego likes. I'm just gonna do what I want.
Mhm.
So that, and that, just that exercise in and of itself helps a lot.
So do you, like you said, you wanted to master meditation. What other forms of meditation do you do that could benefit the audience?
I mean, jujitsu in and of itself is a meditation. Like, because there's, you know, when you're rolling, first of all, you can't hide who you are on the mat. Like, it's just you're gonna express yourself fully. Like, you can't hide who you are. And during the roll, once you stop thinking and you just start acting, that's when it becomes a meditation. And that's usually when you get a little tired. Like after the second or third roll, like you start getting tired and you just start acting, like that becomes a meditation.
Mhm.
Right? Because I feel like people think that meditation is just sit down, cross leg, you know, close your eyes, maybe chant Om, right? But like, nah, that is part of meditation. But really, what I got from the whole master meditation thing, for like, what Mother Ayahuasca told me, was it's like you just have to understand like stillness, you know, and not to be judgmental about what's going on. It's just kind of like be in the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's why
So
that's why I love jujitsu. And
yeah.
I really didn't start getting into that flow state until recently, because I've only been training for like 6 or 7 months. And so
Oh, nice.
now when I'm actually starting to like learn moves and know what to do in certain situations, it's like now I can just go off instinct and get in that flow state. And it's so fun because you get in that flow state, you get a workout. It's very primal, like you're fighting for your life and you can relate it to a lot of your life's problems. You're learning self defense, a valuable skill. And then the journey of it is like such a slow progression that it's so rewarding when you
Mhm.
have to go in. Like it's like takes 10 years to get a black belt. Like you have to go
Oh, I
in,
know.
day out over so long. And like that process is so fulfilling because it takes so much hard work and all the injuries you have, all the sweat you have, all the progress you made. It is almost like a direct correlation and metaphor for your life. And
Oh,
even in my early
yes.
journey with jujitsu so far, like it's helped me develop as a person so much. And
Hmm.
like I'm literally addicted to it now. Like every day I
Yeah.
go, I just love it more and more. So talk about like the impact jujitsu has had on you and just like what is jujitsu to you? Like try to define it.
Ooh, that's great. You know, it sounds cliche, right? When you say, "Oh, jujitsu saved my life," but it actually does. Like jujitsu gave my life a lot of purpose. Uh, because it is the one thing that stayed consistent throughout my entire journey. Like once I started it, after the military, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have jujitsu because all the things that you said, like the benefits of jujitsu that you get that you mentioned, but there's also an aspect of trust because if I have you in the choke, you have to trust me enough to where you go like this, you know I'm gonna let go because if I keep it too long, I could kill you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or me, I'm a dirty leg locker, right? So it's like you have to trust that when I grab a hold of your ankle, I'm not gonna be malicious and tear your knee apart, right? So there's a level of trust, and it's both ways. It's like I have to trust myself enough to know that when you tap, I'm not so like in that like I can't be coming from a place of anger when we're rolling or whatever. It's like I need to have self-control. And then after you get all of that out of your system, my favorite part is just sitting on the mat talking shit. Because that's when it kind of becomes like a therapy session. Like you're tired, you're exhausted, and then everybody just leans up against the mat. And that's when the talking happens. And to me, that's where the magic is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're like, damn, bro, like I had a like this is what I'm going through in my marriage, or this is what I'm going through in my relationship, or this sucks or that sucks. You know, a lot of my veteran friends, it's like we'll sit on the mat. It's just like, bro, like how does talk about like veteran stuff, and it's cool because it just reminds me of like the Marines of where that camaraderie, that camaraderie. So what is jujitsu? Is like jujitsu is life, man. It definitely is life because I've been training jujitsu for 10 years, right? I earned my black belt. Now, what I realized is that throughout the years I've been chasing this black belt. Now that I have the black belt, it's not going to change its color until like for like 50 years when I get the red and black belt. So I don't have anything to worry about now. Now it's not about me, it's about my students. Now I have a school. Now I'm responsible for the training of all of these people that come to me and pay me money to have me train them. But it's like so much more than jujitsu, right? I teach you the moves, but then if you go out there in a tournament, I want to be in your corner, right? And I have to think like, okay, if they win or they lose, like I have to know the right thing to say to them in order to help them continue to grow. Because if you win, let's say it's a young guy that like wins so much, it's like they could get their ego could get overinflated. So it's like, okay, I have to deal with that. Or somebody that goes out there and loses their first match, right? It's like, okay, how do I
You're good.
how do I express to them that just because you're not a loser.
Mm-hmm.
You got that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're not a loser. So it's a big responsibility. And recently, like in December, In my first match at black belt, I won. It was a no time limit, submission only, 14 minutes. I won. Right. I heel hooked the guy. But then in January, I did fight to win and I lost. This guy murdered me. Right. And I thought that that was really cool and beneficial for my students to see both sides of it. Because I didn't get overly excited when I won, but I also didn't get overly down when I lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I still kept the same mentality, like, all right, on to the next.
So does competing take the benefits of jujitsu even further?
Yeah, I think it does. Take a moment where you're not worried about what everybody else thinks. You're not worried too much about your image. You're doing this as a test against yourself. And then it's really me versus me, right? Because yeah, there's an opponent standing in front of you, but did you do everything that you needed to do that day? Like, did you get a good night's sleep? Did you eat breakfast? Are you hydrated? Did you do your weight cut properly if you needed to do that? Right? Have you been drilling the sequences that you're gonna do? Right? Do you have a plan of action when you get in there? And then it's like, all right, once you've done all that preparation, it's like you step on the mat and then it all just your brain dumps. It's just now it's like an ultimate act of meditation where it's like you, even if you wanted to start thinking about stuff, you're probably not going to be able to because you have the adrenaline and the nerves and all that. So I think being able to put yourself in that position and being able to test yourself like that, it's beneficial
Mm-hmm.
because then it helps you out overall in life. Like if you're able to stay calm and execute in those types of situations where it's like, all right, this is my problem, this is how I address it, then it helps you in life when it comes to dealing with problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's like problem shows up, it's like, all right, what are my solutions?
Mm-hmm.
Because in jiu-jitsu, you can't worry about like somebody smashing you and you're like, but I don't feel like getting up today, or I don't feel like moving him out of the way. It's like, no, it's literally life or death at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like competition just helps heighten that.
Mm-hmm. Because even when you're rolling at your school, I don't think you should be going 100% with with other people at your school. So like until you, from what I've heard, and I haven't competed yet, but from what I've heard, it's just like when you get to that competition, it's like that's the first time where you're like full out like doing jujitsu. Like this is it now, and it literally is life or death. And that's what's so cool about it is you can go so hard and bring yourself to like this close to death, but then not damage your body. Because with like striking martial arts,
Yes.
you can't spar 100%. If you get hit in the head that many times, you're gonna have concussions. You're gonna be brain dead and stupid by the time you're 50. But with jujitsu, you
Yeah.
literally go all out, get to that point of death. And yeah, there's injuries here and there, but like it's safe. And I don't know, just constantly being at that point does something to you, and it like makes
Yeah.
everything else so much easier because
Yeah.
the problems you go through in life, most of the time, it's not a life or death situation. It's stressing about, I got to do this, I got to do that. But with jujitsu, it's like, no, your life is on the line, and it makes it a lot easier to navigate through your problems throughout life, at least in my experience.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that because I feel like the way that life is set up now is it puts a strain on you mentally without having a lot of without educating on the proper tools to like remedy the mental health effects, right? So when it comes to jujitsu, like having a tool like that, not only does it help you with the mental aspects of life, it helps you with the physical aspects as well and the spiritual. So it's like an all-in-one.
Mhm. An interesting benefit of jujitsu that I didn't expect to get was body awareness, like knowing my relationship on the ground, like being able to like it's hard to describe, but you know what I mean? When you just like are so aware of your body and how it moves and its relationship with the ground, it like makes it easier to be present in life in a way. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, I don't know what it is about
What's that?
body awareness in jujitsu. You're good. Um, but yeah, my body awareness has increased so much, and that's really allowed me to be calmer throughout life and just like
Yeah,
feel more relaxed.
yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure like
Definitely. And the body awareness thing that you talked about, I really started to understand that when I started learning leg locks. because in order to get really good at leg locks, you have to know how to use your hands and your feet simultaneously, like an octopus. Because if I'm lifting, like if I'm like working your ankle, like your heels and your ankles, like if I'm working that with my hands, I have to know where my feet are in order to keep the distance or elevate you in a certain way. Like you have to do it simultaneously. And like when you're working guard stuff, you still got to do the same thing, but I really didn't understand it truly until I started to learn leg locks.
Hmm. And then even with like my hips have opened up so
Yeah.
much. Like my hips were so tight before, and I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
when your hips open up, like it just I can't believe I was living my whole life with like without that range of motion in my hips. I don't know what it is, but like I think it's going back to that trauma thing, storing itself in your muscles. Like when you can like really loosen everything up and move and have full range of motion throughout your joints, for me has felt like it's just relieved a lot of stress and emotion and all that. So that's another benefit that I wasn't expecting to get. That's been
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. Do you
Yeah.
believe that
Definitely.
jujitsu's the most effective martial art?
I mean, of course, I'm a black belt, so I'm gonna have a bias,
Right.
right? But I do believe so, based on what you covered earlier when you talked about how the striking martial arts, you can't go balls to the wall. You can't go 100. You can't go 100 in the gym because you can get concussed.
Mm-hmm.
So, so with those martial arts in particular, you really don't know the effectiveness of them unless you compete,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's gonna be but with jujitsu, yeah, you shouldn't go 100 miles an hour. Like rolling with you, you're a white belt and black belt. Like I shouldn't go 100 miles an hour with you, right? I shouldn't go 100. But if I'm going against another black belt and we're both competitors, like we could, go.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like because we can go really hard with minimal chances of us getting seriously injured, I feel like that's what makes it most effective because I'm so used to that pressure that if I go out there and get into something in the street, I'm going to be used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that thing that they tell us in the military where it's like you train like you fight. Like you able to stay calm in those situations in the gym, you can stay calm in those situations on the street if you do need to use it.
Absolutely.
So, so yeah, I have a bias, but I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like jujitsu is the most effective martial art.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you look at like UFC. I think what really opened my eyes to the power of jujitsu is watching Ryan Hall versus BJ Penn. How they were standing up, and then Ryan Hall just rolls on the ground, catches his leg, and taps him like instantly. And Ryan, for those of you who don't know, Ryan Hall is just like this skinny, dorky dude. Like doesn't look like he's an assassin, but he's insane. And after I saw that, I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to learn this.
Yeah. Um, and what I liked about that fight is it shows you that even if you're one of the best black belts in the world, you still have to keep up, right? Because Ryan Hall, like they're both black belts, but Ryan Hall knows the leg game.
Mhm.
You gotta now this day and age, you have to learn leg locks. You have
When
to spend some time learning and not make it your, huh?
when do you think would be a good time to start learning leg locks?
Man, I teach my white belts now, to be honest. Like I get them, I show, all the jujitsu that like, I show takedowns, I show guard passing, I show guard, like I show everything. But I also don't keep leg locks away from them. I think that you should start experimenting when you're coming up, but don't don't but you still have to learn how to pass. Still have to learn how to pass because what some people do is they get caught in this loop of anytime you try to pass, you can't get the pass, you just drop for the leg lock. Or you don't even try to start passing, you just drop for the leg lock because your legs are there. Like so yeah, I mean, I teach my white belts now. I think that leg locks are a part of jujitsu and you should just start training them as soon
Mhm.
as you start.
So for anyone listening that's not familiar with jujitsu or hasn't trained jujitsu, what would you say to them about jujitsu and why they might want to at least like try a class? Like, what advice would you give to people who are just like never even touched the sport?
Mm. So somebody that's never touched jujitsu, why they should do it? Damn, they, they should just do it. um, really, because it's one of those things. It's like 9 times out of 10, if you try jujitsu, you're gonna get addicted to it. Because okay, let me back up a little bit. Have you ever read King Warrior Magician Lover?
I actually just got that book in like 2 weeks ago. It's on my list. I'll probably get to it like in a week or two.
Okay, so in learning about the archetypes, right, and in reading that book and seeing how like you can be more of one thing than another, right? So let's say like you're like a lover, but then your warrior is also high, right? Or you're king, you're mainly a king, but your magician's also high. Like, uh, I feel like people that are like have that strong warrior archetype, it's like you need to do this because if you don't fight something, you're gonna fight yourself. Because warriors need to fight something, and being around jujitsu people for as long as I have been, it's like we were just destined to do this. Like if it was back in the days, if it was like back in ancient times, we would all be warriors. We would just be with the warriors training all day
Mhm.
and going to fight. Like it's just something that we just have naturally in us. Right. There's some people that would try just like, oh no, they're touching each other, they're sweating on each other, like, oh hell no. Right. We could get hurt. Why are they, choking me and stuff like that? Like some people they just can't do it. But then like people like me and you, it's like we need to do this. It's like medicine,
Mhm.
you So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question, but I just feel like for a lot of people, it's just something that we need to do because as warriors, we have to be fighting something.
Mhm.
And I feel like the best way to get that warrior energy out is through jujitsu because there's very little chances of getting seriously hurt, and you could express all that energy in a safe place.
And if that's not enough for you, you're also getting a good workout. Like if you don't like to go to the gym and just do all
Perfect.
day, like go like jujitsu. What I love about jujitsu is because it's cardio, but it's also strength at the same time. You're using muscles that you would never use in like a conventional lifting, but you're also getting your cardio in. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
But
Hell yeah, dude.
so what? Because I've for those of you listening, I would definitely recommend to go follow Drew on Instagram. You got a lot of cool videos, just sharing perspective and talking about different books and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Um, I saw you had a post about the Way of the Superior Man. I like that book a lot too.
Mm,
The Rational Male. You just talked about King Warrior, Magician Lover. Like, what are some of your favorite books?
definitely King Warrior Magician Lover. The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz is one of my favorites. And then uh The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Mm.
Yeah, those three are my favorite books of all time. Because King Warrior Magician Lover, it really helps you understand like the archetypes within your masculine, right? And then Mastery of Love, it really puts into perspective like how much like what's the benefit of loving yourself so that you can share that love with others.
Mhm.
And then The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, for whatever reason, I feel like Arabic poets, to me as a poet, like I love Arabic poets. So for whatever reason, that language is just beautiful, and it just comes out beautifully when they translate it in English. And it's a really So that's one, like the way it's written is one reason, but then also the perspective that he shares in that book is amazing, because there's like, it's basically about somebody who grew up somewhere, then he left and then came back. And then they were like, okay, they were asking him questions when he got back. And one of them was like, well, what do you talk to us about children? And he's like, you know, your children, you make them, but they're not you, right? They come from you, but they're not you. So uh you can't, so he's like talking about like how to nurture them into what they're going to become, rather than focusing on what you want them to become, like your idea of what you want them to become. So it's like different perspectives that he shared, and the way that it was written, like that is great book to me.
Mm-hmm. You do poetry too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you
I
said,
like performing.
yeah, you
Yeah,
said something
I really
earlier.
like performing.
The opposite of depression is expression. So I would argue
Yeah,
jujitsu is a form of expression. I'm sure you would too. And is
for
so,
sure.
what are some other ways that you express yourself besides jujitsu?
Writing, like if you ever feel, yeah, writing, like if you ever feel like overwhelmed and you just can't get like a thought to be coherent, like you just all over the place, just write. Sit down with a pen and pad and just write the first word that comes to mind, and just write. The sentences are going to be outrageous, right? It's not going to really make any sense, but if you allow yourself just to write the first thing that comes to mind, then when you get out all like the BS, that's when you could become clear, right? So just writing without a purpose, like just write until you get it all out. That's one way. uh Definitely jujitsu, and the dynamic meditations, they're awesome too. But sometimes you just need to shake your body and fucking scream into a pillow just to get it out. So that's what that would be my, that's the way that I deal with it.
To
Because
piggy,
shutting down, like depressing your emotions and shit, like it's not gonna help.
mhm. Piggyback off of what you said about writing, I started journaling like 5 or 6 months ago, and
Mhm.
what I do is basically I have like a college ruled notebook, so it's a lot of lines, and I just force myself to write 2 pages every day, just on a stream of consciousness, like no prompt, just
Boom.
pick up the pen and let it flow out, and the clarity that's giving me, I can't imagine going back to not writing every day. So for
Mm.
those of you listening, like I think journaling is a practice I think everybody should adopt, because it gives you control of your thoughts, gives you clarity, and it just gives you this sense of peace and calmness and understanding of who you are. And for me, has allowed me to operate throughout my day from a more present place.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I've experienced this, so yeah, I second that for sure.
So before we end this, I want to talk a little bit more about like your journey with plant medicines now. I know we've talked briefly about like how you microdose and how it's helped with jujitsu, but what does your medicine or your relationship with plant medicine look like now? How do you use it, and what's the impact it's having on your life?
So microdosing really helps because it's like it enhances the neuroplasticity in your brain. So if you microdose on mushrooms and you go to learn something, it's easier to comprehend and stick. So whatever that plant does for you, like it helps with the neuroplasticity, and it's just like you're able to learn stuff better. When it comes to jujitsu, you're able to get into that meditative state easier, at least for me, when I'm microdosing. It's easier to get into that meditative state. Uh, so I definitely recommend that, and I do that. But for like heroic doses of mushrooms, I'll just feel it. It's kind of like the plant calls on me, like when it's like, all right, you need a boost, or we need to tell you something. We need to show you some shit. Uh, the last time that I did it is I was with one of my friends I went to combat with, and he was just going through it. And I'm like, well, he lives in Tampa, so I was like, yo, just come here, you know, and we'll take it. So I had 10 grams of mushrooms. He comes over, and I'm like, all right, you know, make sure you fast for the day. Make sure you know you stay conscious of your thoughts and stuff like that. Like try to keep it positive. And we trained jujitsu, and then as soon as we were done, we ate like an acai bowl or something,
Mm-hmm.
just to get something in our stomachs, but like something healthy. And then I blended those 10 grams of mushrooms and split it in half, and then we took it. And my house at the time had like a lot of plants in the, like everywhere in the living room. So him and I just sat there, and as the sun was coming down, it just felt like it was just me and him in space, and we were on the same level. And it's just like we just talked about like the stuff that we experienced in Iraq, and like the stuff that we experienced in the Marine Corps, and then like talked about all the different things that happened in the like in between. And then it's like, you know, the different struggles that we had, and it's like the mushrooms are taking us to this place, and then the plants, you know, it's just a beautiful experience. And it really helped us like dissect a lot of what he was going on with, like what was going on in his life. And it was beautiful. So I definitely would recommend that. Like if you're gonna be with like a friend, and like both of you can do it, and like you take like that equal amount, especially if you had like shared experiences like what we had, and it's somebody that you trust, and you just go in.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And then if you could make the journey to Peru and go do ayahuasca, I would definitely recommend it. I haven't done it in the United States, nor do I have like a desire to do that. You know, I don't necessarily want to do that, but there's just something about the doing it in Peru where it's from, like that's with those shamans, like that's what I would rather do.
Mm-hmm.
But no knock against anybody that does it in the US. I just don't do it.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, I've been invited a lot of times just in the past few months to there's like ayahuasca ceremonies going on around Texas and Florida. I think there's some, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't feel as right. And again, yeah, it's no knock on anyone who does it, but I definitely will be making the trip down to the jungle. I don't know when. I'm having dreams about it and shit all the time. So I know it's coming, but yeah, man, that's awesome. I'm excited to sit with the plants, and I would love to link up with you sometime when I'm out in Florida and
Yeah, hit me up.
get some training in. Do you know if Elliot's doing any more of those grounding camps
He's doing it once a year.
once a year?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when the
Doing it
one
once a year.
this year is?
I don't know, but it's usually around fall.
Okay.
Yeah, because he doesn't want it too hot. So
Right.
I'm gonna think October.
Okay.
It
So,
usually happens around that time.
okay. Where can people find you, Drew?
Drew underscore Phoenix, DRU underscore PHOENIX on Instagram. Uh, there's Drew Phoenix on YouTube too. My YouTube channel, I need to do some editing on there, but there's a lot of cool videos on there too that I've done throughout the years. And then follow my jiu-jitsu school at A and M BJJ. That's A and then and spelled out and then BJJ on Instagram. And if you're ever in South Florida, you know, come train.
For sure, bro. I'll hit you up. Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
for sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.